Hi, and welcome to a Small Medium at Large podcast. I'm your host, Gail Hyson, bringing you intimate interviews beyond normal boundaries. I want to thank all you listeners for joining us here as we start our fifth year of podcasts, and we're getting close to 130 shows. I want to thank Nancy for posting and putting our show on Spotify, Google, YouTube, and all other social media sites. And I want to thank Richard for producing the show for us. So I want to tell you all a little bit about our special guest today. Our special guest is Maria Owl. Maria Owl is the founder and director of Sacred Future. She's an international spiritual teacher and healer working to empower women and men to align with their natural harmonic resonance within the greater web of life. Maria has taught Indigenous medicine in higher education for over 12 years, including at New College of California, Dominican University, and Naropa University. Maria is also the former Dean of Students at Energy Medicine University. Maria has guided over 1,000 people through wilderness rites of passage and nature-based ceremonies for over 25 years. She has had the great privilege of learning with Native teachers from 18 different traditional cultures, and she is deeply rooted in her own Indigenous ancestry and identity. Maria has an MA in Integral Counseling Psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies and a BA in Culture, Ecology, and Sustainable Community with an emphasis on group facilitation from New College of California. She's also a certified herbalist and a clinical hypnotherapist. Let's welcome Maria here today. Hi, Maria.
Hey Gail, thank you
Good.
for that beautiful introduction.
Well, thank you so much for being with us here today. I want to tell our audience that I did have the pleasure of attending your cacao ceremony. So we have actually met once in person, but we will go to that later in our questions. But I just wanted our listeners to know that I really enjoyed the cacao ceremony and meeting you, and was very delighted that you'd be on our show. So my first question that I ask everybody is, where did you grow up, and did your family support a spiritual path that you are now on, or did this occur later in life? And if it did, was there a pivotal moment you remember when this happened?
Oh my goodness. It's definitely not a straightforward answer. Um, I actually grew up in I call them like my a spiritual family that was not practicing spirituality or any religion. I'm talking about my immediate mother, father,
Mm-hmm.
yet they still sent my brother and I to Catholic school for the first through eighth grade years. Um, and at the same time, I was attending my grandmother's church. She was very religious in the Episcopal church. So I was
Mm-hmm.
singing in the choir there, and I was going to school at a Catholic school, yet I wasn't baptized. So I didn't have to participate in a lot of the, ceremonies that they have. And therefore, I really enjoyed religion.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something I was being made to do. I just did it my way, and it really impressed my life. So when I went from Catholic school into public high school, I found that there wasn't such an acceptance for religion or for um, Jesus. It was very like biology class, it's very Darwinism and like that. So I felt very disillusioned suddenly by religion because it was a whole different world in public school. So I then turned to find solace in Native American spirituality. That was my sophomore year of high school. And so I
Wonderful.
dove into that. And when I was about 16, 17, I got a job at a metaphysical bookstore. and I started reading everything I could about Vision Quest and shamanism and all the different tribes. By the time I got to community college, I dove into anthropology and was heading toward a minor in American Indian Studies. So that's kind of how I ended up in the Indigenous wisdom track in my life. Um,
And was that in California or where were you
all
growing up?
in Marin County,
Oh,
yeah, California.
so then you're a local.
Yeah, I'm very local. Both my parents were born in the Bay Area as well.
I
So
see. So that's when it happened was it sounds like you had a very nice open family that didn't push anything down your throat as a child that you had to do, but just exposed you to these things and let you decide yourself what you wanted to take in or what you didn't want to do. You weren't forced to be baptized or forced to take
no,
communion.
no, and it was kind of they were I would say my parents were pretty hands off in a lot of areas of my life. There was a lot of trauma in my childhood.
Hmm.
So my brother and I very much relied on each other for safety. And I found myself parenting myself, somewhat parenting my mom, being a savior to everybody, and really had to navigate. And this is why I say, thank the Lord I went to Catholic school because I don't think that without the teachings of Jesus that I would have survived what I went through as a child. So that was kind of my guiding light, and it's cool because that was my foundation. In every tradition, indigenous tradition that I went into and learned from, many of them practice Christianity and their indigenous tradition, and many of them acknowledge the threads that were the same in both, in what Jesus taught and in their earth-based traditions and culture. And so it was easy to kind of move from, what Jesus taught into indigenous tradition because it was very tribal. It was very basic and tribal what Jesus taught. So,
Well, this is very good because what I do find in a lot of my interviews with people and in my own life is that the trauma we have had as children that not all people have experienced when they were children, the kind of trauma that some children have had where they've had to raise themselves or find ways of living safely, that those also are often children that spirituality is what saved them and put them on that other path instead of a path of, drug abuse, addiction, or destruction. And so that's why I always like to ask this question because I always feel that whatever the traumas I went through, I'm grateful to them because they opened the doors to make me understand compassion and things about life that I might not have known had I lived a, storybook type childhood. So that's why I always ask my guests this, and I often find that there is trauma involved when then the person starts searching. So
yeah.
I want to know what is your indigenous ancestry and what is your indigenous identity?
Well, I didn't even know until I was in graduate school getting
Aha.
my master's, and that was in my late 30s that I went to graduate school. And so I was always just very general. I'm Mexican American, I'm Mexican and European descent on my mother's side back to the, founding fathers. And so in graduate school, I took a class on shamanism, and it really was about who are your own indigenous ancestors. So I decided to focus on my father's line because it was a quicker route to my indigeneity in Mexico. And I found that I'm connected to the Huichol.
Oh,
And
really?
so, yeah, yeah. So, and I know you have a very strong connection with the Huichol too, Gail.
Well, I have my retail friend is here right now. He's going
Oh,
back
wow.
to he's going back on Sunday. So we've been blessed with him for the last few months.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah,
In
it was,
fact, right. Oh, these are Huichol earrings that were made by
I
one of someone in
saw
his
that.
family. Yes.
They're gorgeous.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a
So,
total shock to me. I didn't expect that. I know I have Mayan ancestry kind of way back because even in Mexico, people migrated from the south to the north
hmm.
over time. And so it's really been interesting to kind of track the lineages of that indigeneity. And I know now from doing a lot of deep work over a decade with the Mayan people that the Maya and the Hopi are very connected. The
And the Huichol, all three of
and
them.
yeah, they really acknowledge each other as cousins. Like they all came from the same origin culture.
Hmm. And
Yeah,
that, I found that very fascinating also because when I had some Huichol friends that came and spent time with the Hopi, that's exactly what they came back and said to me, that it's like they're brothers. And also that from what I was reading in some things, it seemed like the Mayan and the Huichol were also connected in ancestry. I'm not sure 100%, but I thought that that they maybe have similar DNA or something about them are connected. So that was what an exciting and wonderful thing to discover. I know I'm all 99% Eastern European, so I
Eastern
don't have
European. That's
anything. Yeah,
amazing.
I have nothing interesting. And
Oh, it's interesting, Gail. Eastern
yes,
European culture is so rich. I mean, it's all deep in dragon lore.
it's it's a it's a lot in one particular area, and the only other thing I had was a bit of Neanderthal. But now my husband, when if you looked at a map of the world, he had DNA from places all over the world
Yeah,
because he had so much different interracial marriages and things. So he got a nice collection. I always
yeah.
find this fascinating. So, did you tell your family about the Huichol? Did you tell your father? Were you able to talk to him about the things you
No,
were
no.
discovering?
Not at that time, no. We were estranged, so that wasn't somebody I got to kind of lean into around it. But no, it was really just for me, and it changed my life to know because suddenly that aspect of me that was always seeking for like, why am I so drawn to indigenous wisdom, to indigenous tribal ways? And I'm always having to go into other tribes who adopt me, who call
Right.
me their daughter. But who am I? Who are my, indigenous people? And to find that, in a modern, in our modern times, to find your indigenous culture, it's a different kind of thing than maybe in the past because it gives me a sense of roots. And at the same time, if I went to a Weechel village, they would be like, "You're not Weechel," you know? So, so it's nice to know that like a percentage of my DNA came from that incredible stock, of wisdom.
Yes.
And
And
informed me.
strong bodies and strong bodies.
Absolutely.
Very
Yeah.
strong bodies. Those just the trek in the old days when they'd walk the 400 miles to pick the peyote in San Luis Potosi. I mean, all the way up from the mountains. Just their life is. I've been there 6 times, and I've been there for 2 peyote ceremonies and one ceremony of the corn. And the fact that my dear friend Julio is leaving is because he has to go back home for a ceremony to help heal his daughter, and they've tried Western medicine and it has not healed his daughter. So now they're resorting back to shamanism and for shamans to find a deer, kill the deer, have a ceremonial event where all the community comes together to help her in her healing. And so I get to sit here right in the front seat and get to hear all these things that are happening and what goes on. And the Western medicine could not find anything wrong with her with the blood tests and all the different things they did. So now I'm going to be curious to see whether the shamanic ceremony is what actually ends up healing her. So that's what we're hoping for. And we're hoping for them to be able to catch a deer because Here, when Julio visits, he looks out in our orchard
There's
and there's
deer
five
everywhere.
deer everywhere. And when he goes back to the mountains in the Sierra Madre, they can't find a deer because they've all been killed, they're just wiped out. So I keep wishing that he could just take a few deer in his luggage and, bring him back to Mexico.
Repopulate, yeah.
Right. So, what other indigenous initiations and shamanic experiences have you had? And is there any one particular experience that maybe stands out that you'd want to share?
Well, one thing that I wanted to mention earlier is that as we were talking, trauma is an initiation, right?
Yes.
So and many people, a lot of students I've had and have clients who have a heightened sensitivity to the paranormal and have had a lot of paranormal experiences and tend to be mediums or channels, have had either a lot of trauma in their childhood or an acute trauma like a blow to the head or car accident where they have a head injury that opens their channel up um, because it instigates dissociation, traveling in and out of
Hmm.
the body. It's unfortunate that it's in this kind of traumatic injury way, yet it is nonetheless a channel that's open now. And unless you develop that and come into control of that channel, people will feel really scared of it, victimized by it, like at effect of it. And so, what I've done through my coming into control of my channeling ability and mediumship ability is to help other out of control mediums to understand what's happening to them, what these experiences are, and how to feel safe in their bodies, and that they can actually be at cause around their gift rather than at effect. So,
That this is That's a wonderful thing that you're doing that because the person can have also, I know there's a lot where it's near-death experiences when they have the near-death experience and they are hit with so much information, realizing that they're not the body or whatever real, and then there's nobody to talk to that about what happened to them just now. And uh, sometimes they don't I have one friend who she doesn't even want to talk about her near-death experience.
mhm.
And I know that it's very traumatic, but I still think it's very important for them to speak about it and to move from that because I do believe that there are many people who speak about the gifts they receive, but some people are like you're saying, they're afraid. And one day all of a sudden you have all these other things that happen for you. I have one guest, Donna Ribadow, that when she drowned and was clinically dead, and it was in her 60s, and all of a sudden she's an amazing sports medicine acupuncturist. All of a sudden everything she would touch would just start to bend, and she started to have this relationship with anything metal, anything she would touch. Even if she sits in a restaurant, the forks start to curl up while she's sitting there. And that she didn't have that when she was in her 40s, but it occurred after she had the death experience and came back. So these are really important things to talk about, and also that you're in a position to help some of the people in that, which brings me to discussions about your shamanic experiences personally yourself. So is there like do you find that you're mostly drawn to the Huichol, or do you find that there's other indigenous ethnic groups that you feel drawn to? And
Yeah.
if you could talk a little bit about that. I know you spoke about the Hopi, and there was a list of other Native Americans, and I'm wondering if you've had spent time with them or what you have to say about that.
Yeah, it seems like I I never set a course for a specific people to learn, like they're the ones I'm going to go to where their tribe is and look for an elder. I never
Hmm.
had those ideas. It was always in a time of major life transition and transformation in me, usually a grief, that spirit would bring me help, and I would recognize the help and say yes to it. And that first help that came was through the Lakota from South Dakota, from Wagner, South Dakota, and I ended up going out there for over 6 years to do ceremony and participate. And I went through a lot of initiation processes with them to become a pipe carrier. I was young. I was like 19, 20, 21, 22
Oh,
years old.
great.
And I was sundancing and doing all these, having these experiences that were just totally cracking open the fabric of reality, you know, driving around with the medicine man who had brought us into his family, on a road trip. He was doing doctoring ceremonies all over the place, and we were his assistants. It was really an amazing life experience, but also there was a lot of shadow, and ended up splitting with them because of that. But while I was in that connection through my aunt on my mother's side, which is the European side, funny enough, my aunt is a master basket weaver, has written books. She's very well known on the East Coast. But she had met some Hopi, a Hopi family on the East Coast who were watching her do a presentation at a museum. So they became fast friends and they invited her to the Hopi reservation. And she's like, Maria, you have to meet these folks. So one year driving to South Dakota, we stopped in Hopi land and Second Mesa, and we became family. Like it was, I've helped them do their dry farming, planting corn seeds. I've been to a lot of the social dances, Kachina dances. I've been deeply honored by my adopted family there. When my Hopi dad died, it just crushed me. He was like the father that I didn't have, right?
Hmm.
And they just always saw who I truly was. And so that was a profound blessing. Um, and then after that, there were other opportunities. I actually married a man from New Zealand, so I was there for long periods of time where I would engaging with the Maori people, and their
Wow.
culture and traditions and languages, and that was amazing. Um, and recently, the Huichol, I told you when you were here for the cacao ceremony, I had an incredible experience with the Huichol, having a dream come to me that I'm still trying to understand.
Mhm.
But I believe that this dream points me to Lemuria, and Lemuria being a root to, the Polynesian people, who I believe the California Indians also come from. Their language has so many similar words and syllables to Hawaiian, Tahitian, Maori. So there's this huge kind of Oceania system for me that I feel connected to. And when I was in my almost 40, I initiated as an Orisha priest. And again, that wasn't planned at all. I was praying for an initiation because I felt I had developed to a point in my spiritual work with people, but I felt I'd come to like my ceiling, and that I didn't know
Mhm.
how to go beyond where I was, and I was praying for elders, for I was actually literally praying for people in my own DNA lineage to train me further. I was thinking Weechel, but I ended up in an ancestor ritual with these two elders who were from the Nigerian and the Cuban lineages of Orisha, Ifa Orisha. And so after that
Wow.
experience,
Hmm.
I didn't expect anything. I'm like, okay, I've worked with a lot of native teachers. Some are really true-hearted and some are kind of dangerous, and I didn't plan to participate fully. I was going to observe. That was my, thought going into it. So I just kind of tried to just observe. Well, it turns out once we made our ancestor pots, which you have a vessel with dirt in it and big cowrie shell, and there's a whole ritual to invoke Egun, the ancestors. Um, well, lo and behold, I was the one that started going into convulsions on the floor
Uh,
and had to like
been
lift
there.
me up and put me in a chair and hold me against the chair while the Egun came into my body and started touching people and talking to them and giving messages. And
Was that your first channeling experience?
that was my first full body mediumship experience. Yeah. And up until then, I'd had automatic writing. I had had a lot of, especially when I was younger, astral projections, uh, full body paralysis, getting stuck out of my body and entities, negative beings trying to get into my body. So it was a lot of getting attacked when I was young. Um, and so I never had a positive experience of channeling. So I was very protective of myself and hyper vigilant. So when this happened, I allowed myself to fully go into the experience because I had these very experienced, adept elders singing the songs in Yoruba, with the cowbell and the whistles and the chimes. And, this community knew what they were doing is how it felt to me. So I went there and had my first full body experience. And it was very tricky because after the Egun left my body, I couldn't walk. I couldn't really feel my legs. And I was like dragging myself around the room until my essence came all the way back into my feet again. And I was disoriented for days, and I was having muscle cramping for days after in my calves and my legs. So that was the beginning of my training with my community in Orisha, but also in myself and my spirit guides. How do I do this in a way that really respects the body
Hmm.
with only healthy, purely loving beings, who aren't going to force their way in and want to use my body for their agenda, but who are going to really want my highest health first. So that was a good 6 year initiation process and learning curve to get to that point.
I just want you to know I understand everything that you're saying, and I've experienced it almost exactly word for word, like you're saying, and wished that when I was so young that there was someone to teach you about protecting yourself. And that was half the problem of these things, is that I was 15 when these things were happening. And there wasn't anyone to sit there and tell you about how you protect yourself first and then you do this work. And that things that negative entities, it is very real that negative entities can come and enter in when you're in this more open state like this. And it's important to learn before you do those things how to protect yourself. But nobody was teaching that back then in 1970 when I was having that happen.
Not for me either. And that's what's interesting to me is that when I was with the Lakota, for example, and then when I did a Vision Quest with a Kickapoo man here in California, and they saw this hidden ability in me. And when I would watch them, I could tell they were going into, you know, channeling states with beings
Mhm,
taking over their bodies, but none of them would talk about it. Certainly not to me.
mhm,
And they would say these kind of very like one sentence answers like, "Oh yeah, isn't that weird?" Or Like, why is this happening? Yeah, isn't that interesting? And they wouldn't train me. They wouldn't, yeah. And I thought that was very strange. So, this community did want to train me. They recognized right away my gift, and they said, the man who is my godfather was like, I'd love to train you. So I initiated as an Orisha priest, and I'm a priest of Yamalja, and one with my first hand of Ifa, and was with that community for 3 years. Once again, there was sorcery, also black magic being practiced that I found out later. I was being scapegoated a lot for different, I don't know, I guess for truth telling. And my husband also was initiated. In the meantime, I met my husband. We got married and fell in love, and he was initiated as a priest. And we both left and were like, we're moving to Hawaii and we're done. So, yeah, it's tricky, right? Because I was initiated through Lakota, had to leave because of the shadow stuff. Initiated in Odisha, had to leave because of the shadow stuff. But that doesn't negate the deep, profound experiences I had, and I was rewired. Initiation is a real thing. I
I
mean, you don't just walk away from it.
I no, I was initiated as a Mongolian Buryat white shaman of healing by a Mongolian. Asked to do this. She just told me this is what we're doing. And we had 6 days of intense preparation, and it is not a walk in the park.
Right.
It's a lot of intense, and people don't understand that. And there was a lot of out of body and of, you know, you you're being transformed. Initiation. I've attended in Mongolia as well as here in the United States with the Mongolians. You see them transform when they start to channel. They become that, whether it's an animal, like when I was there was a shamans from the wolf tribe, I think, or whatever it is, they're connected to the wolf. And when
Yeah.
that shaman started doing his ceremony, it was a woman. She turned into a wolf. I mean, she looked like a wolf. She sounded like a wolf. And when we had one of the ceremonies here under my redwood tree we had about 50, no, 30 Mongolians here,
Wow.
the woman turned into two different beings during her process of doing shamanic work with all the different Mongolians. And at one point, she was like a little tiny, like a little child, like 10 years old, and she started rolling around on the land here and laughing and carrying on. And when you looked at her, she looked like a young girl. And then she turned into a really old man. And she really looked like a really old man. It was amazing that their bodies, not only the sound and the voice, but their bodies would move and transform into that being or animal that entered their space as they channeled. So I'm just validating how real that is. So uh, I wanted to just go back a little bit about you were talking about how you help out of control mediums and that you're a teacher in holistic channeling. So do these people recognize that they need to come to someone like you, or is it someone you spot and say to them, I can help you? It's not the normal kind of, resume thing.
Yeah, I think it's both. It's both. I've been doing this like intuitive healing and energy medicine work in the Bay Area since my early 20s. Um, so that like people know what I do, and so I'm really glad. It's mostly word of mouth. I'm
Yeah,
not a big
that's,
self-marketer.
hmm
And yeah, so it's both.
I, I, I think word of mouth is a very it's just a much better recommendation for me. I like to hear from someone else that has had an experience with the person that recommends them.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great way for that to happen. So you say that I'm not sure if it's you specifically. I wanted to understand this about the Grand Master Chi, and I think I'm saying it's QI. So is that pronounced Chi
Key.
or is it Key?
Key. Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us about what this is, who he is, and
Yes.
are you channeling him and do you do this frequently? Is he someone you work with, or was this a one-time experience, or can you explain that for people who've never experienced what channeling is like?
Yeah, sure. Well, I got a lot of good experience through the 3 years that I was with the Orisha
Mhm.
community. So when I left them, I took 2 years off and I went back to the school where I learned intuitive healing in my 20s, 20 years later, and recalibrated my whole system, cleaned out. And then I started channeling what I called the energy of the Great Mother. And
Mm.
for years, I would do a Sunday morning channeling of the Great Mother, and different aspects of the Mother would come through. It was beautiful. And so that kind of moved into this very high frequency, loving channeling experience um, that was a new chapter for me. We moved to Hawaii, and once in Hawaii, I started experiencing a lot of ETs coming through. Go
Hmm.
figure, it's Hawaii, it's like Big Island. So there's a lot of interaction there with the space people. So I had a lot of like my Pleiadian star family started coming through, and that was brand new. Dwayne and I were like, "What just happened?" So that became comfortable and familiar. And then one day we went into a channeling session, Dwayne and I, my husband, and this man came through with an Asian accent, a strong accent, and he's like, "Dwayne, you know me." He's like, you used to work with that Grandmaster Tien from China for 12 years, in this mystical Qigong tradition. And whenever you went into the classroom, there were pictures of the masters, old masters on the walls. This is the lineage that they were practicing. And I was one of them. And I know, your evolution of your spiritual path. I watched you through all those years. And so he just started showing up in almost every channeling we did after that. He said his name was Kiang Shang. So I'm like, okay. And I started calling him Grandmaster. Dwayne did. Grandmaster Kiang Shang. He's like, well, if you want to call me that. He's like, wise teacher would make more sense, or, but so we call him Grandmaster Key now. And that was 2019 when he first came in, around 2018, 2019. And he is now like family to me. He even showed himself to me, which was mind blowing. Um, that's a whole other story, but
In a dream or
he showed himself to me
what?
after, and this is after a long time of channeling him and becoming very close with him. He channeled a whole he channeled a whole course through me, um, called Becoming the Harmonic Self. It's like, I'm like, wow, maybe Grandmaster Key would teach all these, like, this wisdom he's giving to us in a course. And he came through my body and took over my hand and wrote down the whole course in 10 pages. And we offered it like 3 times. And now I'm trying to write it into a book. But I was in the midst of struggling with a severe infestation of parasites, mainly from Dominican Republic. I felt like I was gonna die. I found a healing center on Big Island, and I was really weak. Had lost a ton of weight, and I was just lying on the healing table, looking up at this wood ceiling that had grain in the ceiling boards, of wood. And I was staring at you can find all these patterns in the wood grain. And suddenly, out of the wood grain came this almost three-dimensional man's face, clearly Asian, wearing a hat on his head. He had like almost like a rectangular face, like with like a square chin,
Hmm.
in this flat kind of hat. And there's a woman behind him, which I know her. She's Grandmaster Shenzi, and she's Shen, consciousness, and he's Qi, energy. And they teach together in balance. So Shenzi was right behind him, looking over his shoulder. And it was like a portal opened, and they showed themselves to me. And I just started crying. I knew exactly who they were. I've been in that same healing room years later, looking for that in the grain in the wood, nowhere to be found. It was that moment they showed themselves to me.
I think that's a rare thing. I don't think that normally that happens. So I would see you would feel very moved by such an experience.
Yeah.
I, uh, I, um, I feel like for me, I don't see visual, but I'm very auditory. So I just hear things, but I don't see a lot of like vision or faces or who's attached to that. But I just hear information, but I'm not sure where exactly it's coming from. And so the idea that you could get that trace to that person and to be able to communicate. So then that is who you continue to work with then since 2019? So do you call that person like when you're going to channel, do you say, do you ask for him to come or you just wait for whoever presents themselves?
So, so Grandmaster Key is part of the Celestial Dragon Council.
Mm-hmm.
They're a long lineage from this planet that are connected to, so they learned their mystical qigong from the dragons. And so the dragons that were on Earth and who ascended and went even into higher dimensions, I call them the celestial dragons. So he's like in a kind of a tier of the heavenly realms below the celestial dragons called the Celestial Dragon Council. And they have been my helpers. And they showed us through the course he taught. They would bring us in a trance state as a group. We go into trance with him, and he'd bring us to the Golden Dragon Temple where they would teach us. And so it was direct transmission into every person. It was a beautiful experience. So now they're my gatekeepers because I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so close with them that if I am going to channel anything, like for a client, for example, I'm aware that I may bring through a loved one that has passed and has a message for them. I might bring through a lot of women with European or English descent may have the Council of Avalon come through to speak with them. I can basically channel any consciousness that is of a loving frequency, but they have to go through the gatekeepers of the Celestial Dragon Council first. They're my protectors,
Section.
along with my Pleiadian star family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
What is this? I was just I was just speaking with someone on some show. It wasn't on my show, but I was on theirs. And they were saying to me, "Oh, they know that I'm from the Pleiades group, and I really don't know anything about the Pleiades. Is this a star place, or I have no idea what this is. They just telling me that that's where I'm from. So I'm curious this because you mentioned it.
Yeah.
What is that, the Pleiades? What
Where
is
you,
this? That would
oh, wonderful. You're from
That's
you're
what they
Harvard.
say, yes.
Yeah. I was surprised too when I was first told this. Um, so the Pleiades, I'll tell you the Mayan wisdom around it.
Mhm.
The Pleiades are a
Pleiades.
star cluster that is commonly called the Seven Sisters. But there are way more than seven, It's like, so you can see, the small Pleiadian cluster in the night sky. It always looks kind of like a blur. You can see it better out of your peripheral vision. And Orion often follows the Pleiades in the night sky.
Hmm.
The Pleiades is talked about in oral traditions from indigenous cultures around the world. The Lakota speak about the Pleiades, that they are from the Pleiades. The Polynesian people, in New Zealand, it's called Matariki, and they have a big celebration, and it's the same Mahariki, I think, in because Hawaiian doesn't have R's or T's anymore, so they have another word for the Pleiades in Hawaii. That's their New Year. And
Mm.
so there's a lot of cultures that acknowledge very matter-of-factly that they are descended from the Pleiades star system, that their star ancestors are from there. And
And does that star system exist now, where like scientists refer to it as the Pleiades? Or okay.
yes, 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 absolutely. Yeah, very easy to spot in the night sky if you look for a cluster of, it's like a blurry cluster of stars. Um, and the Maya teach that the brightest star that we can see in the Pleiadian star cluster is called Alcyon in Western science, in Western astronomy.
Hmm.
And Alcyon is a huge sun, like what we call our star a sun. So if we looked at Pleiadian system, there are many stars, and there's this huge sun that they're rotating around. They're actually satelliting around Alcyon. Well, the Maya say that our solar system, our sun, is actually an outer star of the Pleiadian system. So just like for our solar system, Pluto is way out there, has a long orbit around the sun. We're like that with Alcyon. We're way out there,
Hmm.
but we are part of the Pleiades, actually. We're in the same magnetic pull to Alcyon as the other, systems. So this is kind of our local star cluster here. Well, we're all big family, and that's why
Yeah.
we have such an investment in Earth, and many of us have Pleiadian DNA. A huge, I mean, quite a big uh, amount of people, number of people have Pleiadian DNA.
Well, apparently I must be part of the group. That's what I was told. I'm trying to remember. I had a podcast guest who's a Lakota man, but I'm very bad at remembering names right now, so I'd have to look it up and send it to you later. But it might be a podcast you might want to watch of mine. But what he does is, and he was doing it, I think, in South Dakota and Oklahoma. I'm not sure, but he also does it in Hawaii and in Washington. And they do horse therapy, where they bring you blindfolded into a field with horses and they do horse communication and horse healing. And apparently they've had tremendous success with one or two visits with people who have bad addiction problems, and they get cleared of their issues, and they do tremendous, and it's and he does they he sings and he sang on on my show in Lakota. So if the name doesn't come to me before the end of the podcast, I'll make sure to send it to you in an email. But a very lovely soul. And I want to do his, I haven't had the time yet. He does it up in Eureka. He comes here and does it in Eureka. But I want to get to one of his horse retreats experiences. So I have a couple more questions here. I wanted to ask a little bit about you leading community grief rituals, what this is about, how and where is this ritual done?
Yeah. Well, this is another kind of initiation I went through,
Hmm.
a women's initiation. It was 10 months long, and it was in the Dogara. Um, it was Dogara inspired. So the Dogara people are from Burkina Faso, and the elders in Burkina Faso were aware that in the Westerners were really suffering, and they were separate, kind of like had a guard around the heart and had lost their ability to grieve. And so we're becoming insane, like a little bit more lost because of that. So they sent two beautiful souls to the West, to California, to in the East Coast to begin to teach these healing ceremonies. And that was Malidoma Some and Sabonfu Some. And so they brought the community grief ritual modality to us. And for their lifetimes, we're offering these all over the country, and I think in other countries as well. And so there's a lot of people where I live who have known and worked with Sabonfu and Malidoma before they passed. Like 4 years ago now, Malidoma passed, and Sabonfu before him. And so those traditions were changed my life completely. I found those ceremonies as well in my later 20s and knew immediately because of my trauma background. And I was studying Joanna Macy, if you know her work, the work that reconnects, it's all about grief. I knew that I had to learn this earth-based ritual tending grief in a community setting. It was like everything that meant anything to me. And
Mhm.
so I went through this women's initiation, and then was kind of in this community in Sonoma County that were doing, there were men's initiations, there were women's initiations, there were village experiences, there were children's rituals, there were grief rituals, gratitude rituals, all influenced from the Dagara people. So I started to, in with others, we started to offer grief rituals where we knew they were needed. So, for example, after the Santa Rosa fire, we had a, free, like grief ritual with food donated, venue donated, and we just offered this grief ritual to people. And my husband and I flew to Israel and offered grief ritual in Tel Aviv. And a lot of people came to learn how to facilitate those, and they're still facilitating them today. That was in 2016. We've trained two groups of facilitators on Big Island, Hawaii, and I'm about to do a training in December here in California. And so
And that's a grief training, ritual training.
it's to be able to confidently, um, in your own soul essence, like knowing who you are as you do it, offer community grief ritual in the Dagara style. Yes, one
I
day.
would, oh, I'd be very interested in, we just had a beautiful memorial here for a friend who lived on the property here and passed away in January. So we did this for his family 2 weeks ago. And I did ceremony under the redwood tree it was really for his son had a hard time grieving. And when we were able to make this connection of heart to heart, and for also me to step out of the way as I feel like what happens, and let the love of his dad come in, they had a beautiful healing. The spirit of his dad and him. He felt, at the end, he told me he felt like he'd been hugged by his dad with the love, and now he felt so much better. But I just do these things with whatever I hear or I'm told to do. But I'd be very interested in knowing an actual ritual because I do try to bring a lot of comfort or whatever it is I can to family or friends during those times of grief. I have a lot of uh, information around death where I always seem to know when death is coming or I experience it in my body. So I'm very interested to hear about your December one. If you could put me on the mailing list or something, I can remember about that. So, okay, so that answers my this question. I'm going to go over my little list here. I had a couple other things. We're coming up on our hour shortly, but I think we're going to have enough time for the rest of my questions. You said that you've had incredible experiences, and I've always wanted to know about this. And you said, I didn't know what you mean by this, but it said you've had over 6 years swimming with dolphins in Hawaii. Now that's always that's on my bucket list to do somewhere, even though I can't swim, but I'd like to go out there and be with a dolphin. But you said, and I didn't know what this meant, as ET races in our oceans. So if you could explain what you meant by that, and also if you could share just some of the joy of what you experienced with this so that anyone listening might want to try this, whether it's in the Hawaii or I know it's also offered in Florida and some other different places around.
Yes, yes. Yeah, the dolphins again. Look at this book I just picked up.
Oh, beautiful cover.
It's about the Chumash people,
Oh, yes.
and they believe that the women were birthed out of dolphins. It was the creator mated with a dolphin and gave birth to twins, a dolphin and a woman. And then the creator mated with a shark and gave birth to twins, a shark and a man. So the Chumash people really believe that the women are from dolphins and the men are from sharks. But that's just one example. The Dogon tribe, they also have oral tradition saying that they've witnessed dolphins come from spaceships, like out of the sky into bodies of water. And so they kind of arrived in the timeline. They didn't evolve on the planet like the whales did, but they arrived in the middle of time, and are um, came forward with us at a certain point of the timeline. But they are like being with an alien. Like if you think, like, what would it be like to meet an alien? Just go swim with a dolphin.
I never heard of
Yeah,
that similarity. I've never heard that.
yeah, they're absolutely conscious, more than us. And when you swim with them, often you have like experience after experience where number one, they'll do healing on you. Number two, they will telepath with you and show you sacred geometries. They communicate through resonance and sacred geometries. They will teach you. So, for example, one of my amazing mentors, Joan Ocean from Big Island, who's like the matriarch of the dolphin swimming community on Big Island, she told a story that she was in the bay on the west coast of Big Island, and she ended up in a pod, like a small pod of bottlenose dolphin, like four dolphins. And she had her underwater camera with her, and she had been swimming with dolphins for a while at that point. So they knew who she was, right? And so there was a male and a female, and the male was just kind of floating, and the female is swimming past Joan and looking at her, saying, "Are you watching? Are you watching?" And going really slow. She's like, "Watch this, get your camera ready." And she swims right through the body of the male dolphin.
Whoa.
And Joan captured it on film.
So you've seen
And
that.
I saw that, yeah, many times. And Joan's saying, like, they want us to know the only reason why they'd show us that is to say, you can do this too. This is who you truly are. This is what you're truly capable of. You can spin your cells, your atoms so fast that you can become light. And so they teach us in so many ways. I was um, swimming with them one morning, and the water was so clear and so calm. And I was floating, and this one dolphin came right up to me. And it took this from we think of them as horizontal in the water. It turned into a vertical and then bent its head like it had a head like we do with a chin.
Right.
It's like, and like faced me and looked at me and it's like, look, I look like you. I look like you. And then it went like in a vertical position. It like went to my husband and did the same thing and went to this other woman we were with and did the same thing. Very, very, very slowly and like purposefully. Like, it. one thing after another like that happens when you swim with them. When they have newborn babies, you know, they will recognize you and they'll be like, oh, here, take care of my little calf while I go, do this over here. And then they'll come and you just kind of calf sit. Like, they trust us so much. They'll leave their calves with you.
And
And
do you get to physically touch them? Like, do you get to touch their body?
I've had three experiences where they have allowed me to touch them. Typically, I would not do it, knew that I just wouldn't touch them.
Hmm.
But there were three different occasions where it was very clear that they gave me permission. And one of those, I was swimming in a bay, and on one day I was in this bay, and this father or this mother and two children were in the bay, clearly tourists, had never swam with dolphins before. And one of the kids was diving down when the dolphins would come up to breathe. He would dive down and tag them and see how many he could tag. And so he's kind of like slapping their pec fins and just, and I was like, oh, no, 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 no. And I swam over to the mom and like, hey guys, like, I need to talk to you. You need to be really respectful. And when we swim with dolphins, you go like this, or your arms at your sides. And, if you're aggressive, then they'll leave and we'll all, not get to have this experience. But we treat them like you respect another human being and let them come to you, and they were like, oh, I'm so sorry, we didn't know. I'm like, yeah, I know you didn't know. That's why I'm telling you. And they're like, thank you so much. The very next day, I'm in a different bay swimming with the dolphins. The minute I get in the water, these dolphins come right up to me. They sweep me up in their swimming. So they're all around me, going really slow with me. And this one dolphin stays with me and is just staring at me. And we're going really slow. And he's just staring at me. And the dolphin gets that close to me. Like,
Oh.
you're saying I can pet you, aren't you? I'm like, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. And she's like, you can do it. And so I took my hand and very softly, I'm like, boop. And she didn't she just stayed right with me. She never broke eye contact. And so finally I relaxed my whole body and I stroked down her whole body. And she didn't leave.
Uh,
She stayed right there in eye contact. And so I did it again. And I'm like, okay, that's all. That's all. I'm like, I just am so freaking like blissed out right now. I can't even handle it. And then we just took off together and we were playing and diving and having this incredible experience. And I knew she knew from the collective dolphin mind they were thanking me for advocating on their behalf the day before.
it's a one. I've always felt that we can communicate to animals and birds and things, and that when you get the response, I just saw that's what it's like to be with the horses. They're responding to your energy and who you are, and they're not seeing your body; they're seeing your soul. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's why you can always trust what their vibes are about you. So we're at our hour, and I just want to go through a couple more questions. Let's see. Okay, that's an end question. I'm just checking what I haven't gotten answered yet. Medium, channeling, Master Chi, community rituals. Aha, okay. You have written a book called Planetary Ascension, The Purpose of SD and the Choice We Face. Can you
3D.
tell us can you tell us about the book and where our listeners can buy it?
Sure. Yeah, the purpose of 3D and the
Oh,
choice we
3D, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Typo.
Yeah. I wrote this book while living in Hawaii over, gosh, 2, 3 years. It's definitely a labor of love. I had been told before moving to Hawaii in a channeling that I was going to write a book that had to do with the creation of like levels of reality and the creation of the universe and like consciousness. And I'm like, There's no way I'm going to write that book. That's way too vast. But then I started, when we moved to Hawaii, we picked up these books, The Law of One, the raw material. And got to the book four and read a chapter or a lecture from Ra in book four, that totally rocked my world. Like, and I knew immediately I had to spread this information. I had to go deeper into this, and the information is the title of my book. It was saying like that we're not on a perpetual hamster wheel of war and pain and suffering and death, old age, sickness, disease, health, injury, like murder. Like we're not in this perpetual wheel of suffering here, that it does actually end. And then we kind of look at the Mayan calendar, the Egyptian calendar, the Tibetan calendar, the Celtic calendars, and the astronomy of the indigenous cultures that tracked that we are at the grand wheel of time. The largest calendar, the long count, came to a close in 2012, and we started a huge new Baktun, a new cycle of 25,000 years, but also 75,000 years. And so we're in a whole new calendar now. Um, and so the Law of One books were reiterating that because you're experiencing this closure of time, so to speak, and beginning of a new octave of experience, um, there will be a choice. You have to make a choice between love or fear, between
Mhm.
service to others or service to self. And that's the only thing that's happening right now, is making that choice. And every experience we're having in the external world, we can judge it or we can know that it's a catalyst so that we choose love or fear. Everything is teaching us and giving us another opportunity to have an internal awakening, an internal ascension experience. So that's the planetary ascension, is that we're all in this opportunity point, and it doesn't go on forever. We're
Mhm.
actually at the closing of the chapter, and this influx of what the Mayan call, the band of light that comes off of Alcyon in the Pleiades, that great sun. There's a huge band of light and a resonant field that comes off of Alcyon in a donut shape. And our solar system is now gotten to the part, it's like um, it takes a certain amount of time to go through our elliptical around Alcyon, but eventually we're going to hit that band of light in our journey. And then it takes 2,000 years to go through it. And then we go back, to the other side of the elliptical, and then 2,000 years to go through the band of light on the other side. And then we go another. And we have entered into that band of light. And whenever this happens, like clockwork, it happens like clockwork. We have a 2,000 years of the golden age of peace,
Mhm.
and all of the um, perpetration and the negative and the service to self, narcissist kind of behavior. Like there's no way it can exist within the higher frequencies that are influxing now. And it's just going to get more and more and more. And that's why we're having so much solar activity right now. And it has been documented, and you know, um, you can find this written up on NASA's website. They call it the cosmic fluff. And they acknowledge it. They acknowledge that we're in this different part of space now, and it's impacting the whole solar system.
Interesting, because I felt like when I'm out in the sun, it doesn't feel like the same sun that I was in a couple of
Absolutely.
years ago. It feels like a totally different sun that feels almost more burning, or it just feels hotter, and it doesn't. I was just discussing this with someone, but we both felt like it's not the same sun, and like we can't figure out whether it was, is there more radiation coming in or what exactly is happening, but physically you can feel that it's different.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
uh,
It is.
so if so, and is this available on Amazon or
It is. Yes.
okay? So our audience will know they can go to Amazon to find that. And I do have one last one. I know I keep saying I only have one more question, but I have
I'm happy.
my closing question, which is really a second question. So I have one more question, then I'll go to my closing question. And take as long as you can. If you could explain the cacao ceremony. I had never heard of a cacao ceremony, and when I saw your flyer for it, I decided I had to go to this. And I have to say, I had never tasted anything quite like what you prepared. It was so delicious, but the
Mm,
effect of it, I got a lot of energy from it as well. So I was just wondering if you could just give whatever time it takes you to explain and if you could just explain exactly like what we did at your house. And then
right.
that'll be my
Sure.
last full question.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, I have to preface it by saying that cacao was kind of brought, the power of cacao. There's like a whole resurgence of cacao as medicine, which makes me
Nothing
so happy.
like ending with chocolate.
Oh, say that again, Gail. You're breaking up.
Did I lose you?
There you are.
Okay. Oh, there you are. Okay, there we are. Okay, go on.
So,
Oh,
Dwayne and I have been traveling to the Yucatan for 8, 9 years now, and we have been we've had amazing opportunities to go into Mayan villages and to help to make cacao, like straight from the pod, roasting the beans, like from fermented beans, and um, making chocolate bars and sipping chocolate on their like ancestral metates. And it's been an incredible experience how huge cacao is to the Mayan people. And so I dove into those traditions and the lore, the stories of the deities of cacao, how it came to the Mayan people, how it was brought to them from the creator, um, and how it came from the sun. The seed of cacao came from the sun and is full of fire. It's called cacao. Kak is fire, K-A-K, and ow is seed, fire seed. And so when we drink it, we're drinking the energy of the sun. And it's very healing. The theobroma just heals the heart. It opens the heart. It expands us. There's a ton of magnesium in it, so it's very good for the body and potassium and other minerals. And so
oh.
it's just amazing to drink it in the traditional way, which is a much stronger concoction and with some honey or a little bit extra cocoa butter maybe for the richness. But otherwise, it's not full of all these additives that we're used to in cocoa powder that has no life force in it anymore. And so when we lived in Hawaii, we were growing cacao and
Mhm.
we were helping our friends grow cacao and making it from the land. And we started to have cacao ceremonies in Hawaii. And then when we got back here, we continued with that. And we would every year, we bring a group of people down to the Yucatan to meet our teachers down there and have experiences with the Mayan people, making chocolate and doing cacao ceremonies at the sacred sites. And it's been a profound influence in my life. It's brought a lot of joy, just like the Dolphins. Yeah. So when you came to the house, so we have
Now,
a
didn't
teacher in the Yucatan, my teacher, Miguel Angel Vergara. And so one thing, his story is his story. It's very amazing, and you can find out more about Miguel from going to Kin.org. Highly recommend people find out what he's teaching and how to learn from him. But so Miguel has recovered an ancient practice of chanting the Mayan words to invoke healing, to invoke awakening, consciousness expansion. And so now I've been working with him, Dwayne and I, for like 6 years, and we bring that chanting way of doing that to our cacao ceremonies. So when people drink the cacao, we then will chant to the deities of the cacao. We'll chant to the creator,
Mhm.
Hunabku. We'll chant to Jaguar, Balam, and we chant the words for divine
Mhm.
human being, for the sacred sun, life-giving sun, for Ishchel, the earth mother. And people have profound experiences, just like you would think when people sit in ceremony at a kirtan and they're chanting in Sanskrit because it's a root language with the root syllables from Atlantis,
Mhm.
from the original language that we all used to speak on this planet.
Mhm.
And so Maya is that root language. And when we chant in the Mayan, everything starts rearranging and people have these amazing experiences. So it's amazing. Yeah, I feel really blessed to carry on that ceremony into California.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much, and the chocolate was like no other chocolate drink I'd had. I think you had some. I don't know if it was cinnamon or some. You added some different spices also
Yes.
into the chocolate that
Yes.
gave it a really. Well, I'm not sure what did you put else in there besides the cacao. Was
I
it cinnamon or?
I put cinnamon sometimes, but I
Hmm.
love putting powdered roses. Powdered,
Oh,
yeah, and vanilla, always vanilla.
well, it was very delicious, very wonderful. So, now I truly am coming to the end, and I'm so glad you shared about the cacao uh, ceremony. I'm wondering if there's anything you can tell our listeners about classes or anything coming up, or your website, or anything for the ones who will not see the description on YouTube and are listening on Spotify, or
Sure.
the other ones. And also, with you ending, if you have any words of wisdom that you want to share and leave with our listeners.
Well, you can get in touch with me by going to sacredfuture.org, sacredfuture.org. And that will, you can see everything on the website there. It's very comprehensive. It has everything I'm doing, the grief work, the facilitator training for the grief ritual work, and the cacao ceremonies that are coming up, and the light worker boot camps that we do, which is online once a month. We offer channeling from Grandmaster Key and the Pleiadian Star Family, and they do healing work. On people. So you lie down in your house and just receive a treatment. Most people fall asleep. It's amazing. So, so that's a good way to know. On the home page, of course, there's a link if you want to um, get onto our mailing list, and then you'll get right into your inbox, what's going on next. And the cacao that I use mainly, I use two different kinds of cacao, but I on the Ish Balam is the name of our cacao kind of company, and we have an Ish Balam link there at the top menu bar, and if you click on that, you can read more about our involvement with cacao and can buy some of the cacao that we use. And I vetted a lot of different kinds of cacao from many countries. And Ora cacao is the one I always fall back into using because it is so meticulously fermented and roasted that they have a high quality control. And I very much appreciate them. So you can actually buy it through our website and get a discount.
Great.
Yeah.
And is there any words of wisdom you'd want to leave our listeners with today?
Mainly that you are love, you are light, you are precious beyond belief, and you're guided. You're absolutely guided and you're not alone. And if things are happening in your life that are feel scary, like an out of control, paranormal events, know that you're the one in the human body. You're the one with the life force. You're the one with the divine creator's essence animating you. You have all the power. And so begin to or continue to practice really embodying the power of your word and your decree about I am, this is my life. I choose this life. This is my body. I love my body, and this is how it's going to go, right? And you can actually create your reality through that self-love and self-respect power of the word decrees. And know that there are beings that love you that will come in to support and protect you, and you don't have to stay confused.
That's
Yeah.
very good, very good words of wisdom. I want to thank you, Maria, for joining us here today. And I want to thank all our listeners for standing by with our almost five, with our, 5 years of podcasting. I want to remind our listeners to share their stories because stories can heal. And everyone should have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead and enjoy your life and be happy. This has been a very happy, nice wisdom that you ended with. So I want to continue that with a good, happy smile. So thank you all for being there. And remember, again, share your stories because stories can heal.